Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we break down the latest news and current events. I'm your host, Walter. Today, we're diving into the world of Japanese politics, where Prime Minister Takaichi has called for a general election. This move is expected to have significant implications for the country's economy and governance. According to recent reports, markets are bracing themselves for a potential surge in government spending, which could impact Japan's currency and stock market. However, some analysts suggest that Prime Minister Takaichi might surprise everyone by taking a more measured approach to economic policy. Meanwhile, the ruling Liberal Democratic Party has announced plans to lift an election penalty on members involved in a slush fund scandal. This decision has been met with criticism from opposition parties, who argue that it undermines efforts to increase transparency and accountability in politics. As Japan prepares for its upcoming election, voters will be closely watching how the different parties address key issues such as economic growth, national security, and political reform. The newly formed Centrist Reform Alliance, a merger between the main opposition Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan and the LDP's former coalition partner Kumito, is poised to play a significant role in shaping the country's political landscape. We'll be keeping a close eye on these developments and providing you with in-depth analysis and updates. For now, it's clear that Japanese politics is entering a critical phase with far-reaching consequences for the country and its people. We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into a complex topic that has been making waves in the world of international relations. The concept of spheres of influence has been around for centuries, but its relevance in today's global landscape is still a subject of debate. Recently, an article by Stephen M. Walt, a renowned professor of international relations at Harvard University, caught our attention. Walt argues that spheres of influence are both an unavoidable feature of the international landscape and an unreliable method for promoting peace. He contends that even if major powers acknowledge each other's spheres, they will continue to compete for power and advantage, often through subtle and not so subtle means. Walt's argument is rooted in the idea that great powers will always be tempted to interfere in each other's spheres, if only to force potential rivals to devote more attention and resources closer to home. This, in turn, can lead to a fragile balance of power, where agreements to respect each other's spheres are prone to breaking down. It's also worth noting that Walt criticizes the Trump administration's approach to international relations, particularly its boasts about imposing its will on our hemisphere. He views this as diplomatic malpractice that fosters greater resentment and provides ammunition for great power rivals to portray the United States as a rogue nation. On the other hand, some might argue that spheres of influence can provide a measure of stability, especially when great powers are able to exert their influence without resorting to coercion or aggression. However, Walt's counterpoint is that even if China, the United States, Russia, and other major powers were to acknowledge each other's spheres, there would still be plenty of areas where they could compete for wealth, power, and influence. Ultimately, Walt's conclusion is that creating stable peace requires more than just dividing the world into spheres of influence. It demands a nuanced understanding of the complex dynamics at play in international relations and a willingness to engage in diplomatic efforts that go beyond mere map drawing. As we consider the implications of Walt's argument, it's clear that the topic of spheres of influence is multifaceted and contentious. While some may see them as a necessary evil, others view them as a recipe for conflict and instability. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're closing out today's show with a story that's been making headlines in Ireland. A teacher, Enoch Burke, has been embroiled in a controversy surrounding his refusal to address a transgender pupil by their preferred name. This incident led to his dismissal from Wilson's hospital school, and subsequently, he was jailed for breaching a court order not to trespass on the school grounds. Now, Mr. Rubble. Burke claims that his jailing is a result of his views on transgender issues, and that his religious and constitutional rights have been breached. However, several judges have countered that his imprisonment stems from his refusal to comply with the court order, emphasizing that it's a matter of upholding the rule of law rather than targeting his personal beliefs. In a recent development, Mr. said in the Dalva, Burke was released from prison to prepare a new case related to the composition of an appeal panel hearing his dismissal appeal. Despite being informed that he would be given the opportunity to prepare his case, Mr. Burke returned to the school the following day, prompting the school to seek his re-imprisonment due to contempt of court. The school's principal, Noel Cunningham, has stated that Mr. Burke's actions have caused disruptions, including protests at the school gates and concerns over safety. Burke, on the other hand, maintains that he has the utmost respect for the courts and was simply returning to his place of work. This complex situation raises important questions about the balance between individual rights, the rule of law, and the well-being of communities. As we continue to follow this story, it's essential to consider the perspectives of all parties involved and the broader implications for society. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.